Hello everyone, and welcome to the final round of the Gibraltar Tradewise Chess Festival. Like I said in my previous video, both Aronian and Nakamura had the white pieces in round 9, so it will be very difficult for them to get paired in round 10. But in the end they did get paired, and it's Aronian versus Nakamura on board 1. Aronian got the white pieces. So let's see this game, and the game is interesting from the very start all the way to the end. Aronian opened with the d4. We have d6 and now e4 transposing into the Pir's defense. G6, we have knight to f3, knight f6, knight to c3 and bishop to g7. This is the classical variation of the Pir's. Bishop to e3, knight to c6 and d5 now. Knight back to b8, we have queen d2, preparing this battery so bishop can always go to h7 to exchange the dark square bishops. We have c6, bishop to e2, and we have castles by Nakamura. Castles by Aronian, and c captures on d5. E captures on d5 and b6 now. Bishop to h6, bishop to b7, now bishop captures, king captures, and knight to d4. And already we have a very interesting position. Can Nakamura capture the pawn on d5? Well, the short answer is no. Why not? Well, because, okay, first, you don't want to capture with the bishop because you're simply giving up your very strong bishop just to grab a pawn, and in the end this loses quite badly. After knight captures bishop to f3, you pin the knight, and after e6, c4, now you win the exchange. Knight has to move, and then bishop captures rook. Another thing is, if you play knight captures on d5, you get bishop to f3 immediately, and after e6, now rook to e1. And after queen to d7, as the queen does have to defend the bishop on b7 when the knight moves, now you play knight to b5. Knight to f6, and this is something you have to play. If you play something like a6, for example, you get knight captures on d5, and after e capture, simply knight back to c3. Now black has doubled pawns, and white will be able to capture, well, the d5 pawn and very quickly the d6 pawn. So this would be very bad for black. So after knight d to b5, best move for black is knight to f6, but then comes bishop captures, queen captures, and knight captures on d6, winning back the pawn, and white is much better in development, and, well, a better position for white. So after knight to d4, Nakamura doesn't capture, he plays a6. We have a4, and now knight b to d7. f4 now, grabbing some more space, not allowing this knight to jump to e5. And here Nakamura does have a lot of options. He can go maybe queen to c7, bring the rook to e8, maybe push e5, but Nakamura decides to play b5 and sacrifice a pawn. So a captures on b5, a captures on b5, and here bishop captures on b5 was played, so Aronian is now up a pawn. And there was one interesting variation that they tried during the live commentary by Simon Williams and Jovan Kahushka, was knight captures on b5, with the idea that after queen to b6 check, king goes to h1, and this e6 move, this was Simon's idea, and after d captures on e6, now rook captures on a1. Rook captures and queen to f2, threatening checkmate. And although this does look very nice, unfortunately it doesn't work for Nakamura. Only move is rook to g1 defending, and now let's say after knight to g4, you can't capture the knight or you lose the queen on d2. After knight to g4 you have e captures on d7, and after bishop to f3, queen captures on d6, you have queen to h4 now, threatening checkmate. But here white actually wins after queen captures on f8. King captures, and now d8 with queen, checking the king and also threatening to capture the queen on h4. So black must capture, and now of course not bishop captures on f3 because you get knight to f2, this is checkmate, a smothered mate. But you play g captures on f3, attacking the knight, and after the knight moves, let's say bishop to d3, and white has a knight, a bishop, and a rook for a queen. Also he's up 2 pawns, so he definitely has the compensation, and it's a better position for white. So black can't go for something like this. So after this, a captures on b5, bishop captures on b5 was played, and now knight captures on d5. Knight captures, bishop captures, and c4 by Aronian. Bishop to b7, we have rook 8 to e1 and king to g8. Bishop captures on d7, queen captures on d7, and now f5. Trying to break open the position, trying to create some attacking chances, and white is definitely better here. Here Nakamura played queen to c7, either going for the c4 pawn, or if the knight moves, maybe queen to c6 will be an idea. Here rook to f4 was played, and rook to f4 is an excellent move, threatening rook to h4, going for the attack, and also indirectly defending c4. If you capture, you get knight to e6, attacking the queen, and the rook on f6. The knight is defended, so this would lose the exchange. So after rook to f4, queen to b6 was played, pinning the knight on d4. We have rook to h4. The threat now is queen to h6, threatening queen to h7, checkmate. So h5 was played, and this is the critical moment of the game. Here Aronian should have played something like rook to f4, let's say rook to a2, and after rook goes back to f2, this unpins the knight and also guards the b2 pawn. Let's say queen to f5, now pawn captures, queen captures, pawn captures on f7, rook captures, and rook captures queen. It's a better position for white. Aronian would be up a pawn, and you know, the game goes on. The problem is, after this h5 move by Nakamura, Aronian played rook captures on h5. And what's the idea here? Well, g captures on h5 was played, as Nakamura saw that this doesn't work. Queen to g5 check, king h7, queen captures on h5, king back to g8, and now queen to g4 check. Here Nakamura played king to h7, and this was Aronian's plan all along. The plan was rook to e3 followed by rook to h3 checkmate. Unfortunately for him, this doesn't work, and this is a very nice moment for you to pause the video and see for yourself why doesn't rook e3 followed by rook to h3 work for white. I'll give it a couple seconds as usual. So for those of you who managed to find, congratulations, you are a great player, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, the reason why rook to e3 doesn't work is rook to a1 check. Now you have to play king to f2, and now comes queen captures on b2, again with check. And now if you play king to g3 or f3, now you're blocking your own rook, so there's really no point in doing this. If you play rook to e2, again, the rook can never come to h3, so the only move is knight to e2, blocking, but now black has queen to g7, offering an exchange of queens, and if rook to h3 is now played, if rook to h3 is played, then simply king moves back to g8 and all is well. And also if you move the queen now, then queen captures on g2 is coming. So probably you want to play something like queen to h4 check. You don't want to exchange queens as you're down a whole rook. And after queen to h6, probably queen to e7, bishop captures on g2, king captures and rook to g8, rook blocks, and now queen to h5, attacking the knight on e2. After rook captures, king captures. Now you don't really have any checks. You can give one check, but after the king hides, there are no more checks. So probably queen e4, and after rook to a2, now pinning this knight, it's attacked twice. The king can help out with the defense, but then a lot of pawns will be in danger, and white has a couple of more moves before black wins this game. So unfortunately this wouldn't work, so after this king to h7 move, Aronian gave one more check, queen to h4, and after king to g8 they agreed to a draw. So this was quite an important moment in this game, because before this rook captures on h5, after this h5 move was played, like I said, if Aronian continued the game with something like rook to f4, he could still continue to play this game for a win, as he's much better in this position. There really was no reason to capture on h5. And it's not like he captured on h5 just to make a quick draw, a forced draw like you've seen, because he really gave it a lot of thought and he really tried to make it work. He really tried to calculate rook e3, how could it work, but unfortunately he missed something in the calculation. I haven't seen the interview, but if the interview does pop up, I will add it in the description below. So that's the game. The game ended in a draw, and as I've heard during the live commentary, there will be 4 people playing the tiebreaks, as there will be at least 4 people sharing first place, probably a lot more. So I've heard that so far Aronian, Nakamura, MVL, and I think Richard Rapport are the 4 contenders that will be playing the tiebreaks, but if some other players manage to get victories in the final round, then maybe Aronian and MVL will be kicked off the tiebreaks. But we'll see. A lot more games to be played, so I will keep you informed. That's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Naren Gopala Krishnan. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. And of course, I forgot, as usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all, and I will see you soon.